everyone, John here from All Miniatures Great and Small, and today's unit overview is going to be the mighty IS-2 from the Soviet Bagration book. Let's see what this Russian giant can do on the battlefield. The IS-2 is a continuation of the Russian heavy tank design philosophy, and really kind of hit the epitome of it. We get it first in Bagration, but it's going to serve the Soviets through the rest of the war and even into the Cold War period. So what does the IS-2 have? Let's look at its stat card. Alright, so we've got a hit on 3 aggressive rating, and that's about the best that the IS-2 can get in the book. It's got a front armor of 10, side armor of 8, top armor of 2. So it's actually armored a little bit better than your Panthers and Tigers. Motivation wise, it's got a confident 4+ motivation, although in counterattack it gets a 3+ because it counts as an assault tank. And last to stand is also a 3+. The skill rating is a 3+ as well, so and that's important. We'll talk about that in a moment. Alright, speed-wise, it's got pretty standard speed for a heavy tank. 10 inches tactical, 12 inches terrain, 18 cross-country, and 20 on the road, with a respectable cross value of 3+. Now, weapons-wise, the IS-2 is rocking the mighty 122mm gun with a rather paltry 28-inch range. The halted and moving rate of fire is both 1, anti-tank is 14. Firepower is a very nice 2+, with the brutal and slow firing rules in effect. Then to round it out, it also has a basically a 50 cal 12.7mm AA machine gun, 20-inch range, 3 shots halted, 2 shots moving, anti-tank 4, 5+ firepower, and self-defense. And then just a regular machine gun. This is the one sticking out of the back of the turret. Just 1 shot, standard stats. Anti-tank 2, firepower 6. Alright, so the brutal and slow firing rules on the main gun. Brutal is infantry, gun, and unarmored tank teams must re-roll successful saves. And slow firing is +1 to the hit for moving rate of fire. So when they move, it's 1 harder to hit your target. Okay, so with that said, the IS-2 is a really interesting beast because it's well armored. It's as it's as well armored as a Tiger, but its main gun, although it's got some respectable stats, is really, I would count it only about half as good as a Tiger or Panther's main gun, if that much. Now, granted, it does have that 2+ firepower and brutal, but you only get 1 shot, and if you move, you are at -1 to hit. So that's a tough obstacle to overcome as a Soviet tank commander. Well, let's talk a little bit about some potential adversaries that the IS-2 might face on the battlefield. First up, we've got a German StuG. Okay, German StuG has a front armor of 7 and an anti-tank 11 gun. That means that a StuG, and by extension something like a Panzer IV, which has the same main gun, cannot destroy a IS-2 from the front, because the front armor of a 10, you roll your d6 to add it to your armor rating. The lowest you're going to be able to roll is a 1, which would make your 10 go up to an 11, which equals. So the best you could hope to do as a StuG is bail out a IS-2 from the front. So not a very good option for you, if you will. So the from the side, it's a little bit better. That AT-11 gun versus the side. Then you're talking almost like when we had our discussion with Tigers. The AT-11 gun's a little bit better. AT-11 versus side armor of 8 means that the Soviet player fails on a 1 or a 2 and equals on a 3, and 4 or higher it bounces. So still 50% chance to bounce on the side, but you really don't want your very nice expensive IS-2 to expose its side if you can help it. Now, the firing back, obviously it's not good for the StuG, because the AT-14 will either, at short range, the best the StuG could do is equal, so a glancing hit. So front armor 7 plus, if they roll a 6, sorry, that's long range, is the best they can do is equal. At short range, the shot goes right through, and the 2 plus firepower more than likely is going to destroy it. Which is good, because as an IS-2 you don't get a lot of shots. You only get 1 shot per tank. So you need any shots that actually connect to destroy the target. So that 2 plus is very handy. So can a equal number of points of IS-2s take out an equivalent force of StuGs? Yeah, particularly at long range, but with the rate of fire that you have in your IS-2, that's going to take several turns, or even more, which your very expensive tanks aren't shooting at other things, or aren't doing other things. So even though you can win that gun duel, you probably don't want to be in that gun duel in the first place. You probably want your IS-2s doing something else. But that said, sometimes that's just what you need to do. You need to knock out that StuG platoon that's dug in on an objective so your infantry can assault, or something like that. That works as well. So there you go. That is a look at the StuG. So let's swap that out and upgrade the Germans. They're bringing out their Panther tank. So the Panther tank is similar to the IS-2 in armor. It's front armor 9. Side armor, though, is only 5. Top armor is only 1. So only the front is as close to equivalent. In the previous versions of Flames of War, the Panther had a front armor of 10, so it was downgraded in version 4. But that's kind of a wash in this situation, because in the previous version, these guys, I believe, fact check me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure these guys had AT-15 main guns. So it's kind of a wash. They went down 1, their main gun went down 1, so the killing potential stayed relative. So the Panther has a gun that is pretty awesome. It is 2 shots halted, 1 shot on the move, AT-14, 3 plus firepower. So the firepower is the only thing that's worse than the 122 millimeter gun on the IS-2, but everything else is kind of in the Panther's favor as far as main gun. And if you math hammer it out, it isn't a good matchup for the IS-2. I should say like 3 SS Panthers cost, I think it costs like 4 points less than 3 IS-2s. And then both of them are hit on 3s in that case. The big advantage of the Panther, and I think this is probably the biggest advantage of the Panther, and by extension the Tiger as well, is that the main gun on the Panther has a 40-inch range. 40 inches is huge compared to the 28-inch range on the IS-2. So what does that mean? Well, think about it on an open table. If you're playing on an open table, and I know you should never do that, but just for purposes of statistics, the Panther, if it's 40 inches away from an IS-2, well, the first turn, if he stays put, the IS-2 can move 10 inches, 14 if it gets a successful blitz. But that's still tough. If they fail the blitz, they're not getting in range, even moving a full 10 and dropping it from 10 to 30. Only with a successful blitz on the first turn would the IS-2 even get into range. And then in that case, the IS-2, even though it got into range, is firing 1 shot at -1. So the 3-hit Panther becomes a 4 for range and a 5 because of the slow firing gun on the IS-2. The Panther doesn't have any penalties. It's just blazing away and hitting on 3s. So the Panthers, if you have 3 of them there, would be getting 6 shots hitting on 3s. Whereas, or I guess hitting on 4s with long range. But still, that's not very good. So you can kind of see that it's a losing proposition for the IS-2s against a Panther. Now, you're always going to get the drop and get the lucky break, but given an equal number of Panthers point-wise to IS-2s, a competent German player is going to have a hard time losing that exchange. And that's a trap I think that the Soviet players can fall into, thinking, I have the mighty IS-2 now, nothing can stop me. I'm going to destroy all the heavy German tanks. Well, that's still not the case. These guys are still quite, quite competitive and quite deadly. And in a straight-up tank fight, like I said, they're still coming out on top. All right, so that's the Panther. The Tiger is almost the same exact boat. And the Tiger brings to the table better armor on the side and top. But that really does end up coming to play too much in tank duels, unless finally you're mixing it up. But any of these tanks getting to the side are more than likely penetrating. If you get a save, it's going to be a 6 and a potential glance. So the Tigers are a tougher prey in that most often than not, the Tigers are going to be hit on a 4+ instead of a 3+. And in that case, your IS-2s are going to have a harder time hitting. The jump from, if you move and you have to add 1 to the shot that you're making, the jump at long range from needing a 4 or a 5 for range, a 6 for moving, a slow firing gun, that's a big difference than needing a 5. Going from hitting on a 5+ to hitting on a 6+ is, you're losing half your hits, is what that comes down to. So it's a tough matchup for the IS-2. So with that said, what is the IS-2 good for? Well, one thing is it's good against infantry. It's a good assault tank. It assaults and hits its victim on a 3+, and it counterattacks on a 3+. So that's very good. It has a top armor of 2 and a side armor of 8. So things like Panzerfausts are going to have a harder time dealing with it. If you have a unit of 5 of these rolling into a Panzer Grenadier platoon, they might take them out in a couple of rounds of assault. And that's one of the main things that the IS-2 is good for. It only has a 3+ cross, which is a little unfortunate if you're trying to dig out units out of the woods. But that said, it's not terrible, and that's what most tanks have to deal with. So it's not bad. So there you go. That's a look at the IS-2. Now we are going to look at separately the IS-85 eventually. We'll do a unit overview for that, but just to let you know what that is basically the same exact tank, but instead of a 122 millimeter gun, it has an 85 millimeter gun, kind of like what's on the T-34-85. And basically it gives it more shots, but drops it to an anti-tank of 12. So how do you field the IS-2 in Bagration? Well, if you saw my review of the book, we talk about it a little bit here, but we'll chat in more detail in this video. Basically, there is an IS-2 company in the book. The IS-2 company has the ability to take IS-2 as a HQ, and then also having IS-2s as your compulsory platoons. You can also swap out one for IS-85 as a compulsory platoon. So that gives you a lot of heavy armor. Now, I wouldn't recommend taking platoons of 2. I don't even think you can anymore. I think you have to take them in 3. I think you get 3 to 5. So 3 is what I would consider a bare minimum for IS-2s, but 5 is ideal, but boy, that's a lot of points. The potential problem with fielding an IS-2 company is that you just don't have a lot of shots. Let's say you manage to squeeze 10 IS-2s into a list. That's still only 10 main cannon shots at your enemy. And if they are veteran, only half of those are hitting under ideal circumstances. So that's just not a lot of firepower to throw out downrange. Now, if each one of those kills a tiger or a panther, well, yeah, you've made your money back. But if you're fighting a medium tank horde, that's going to be a lot tougher. So that's just something to consider. Or when you're building that IS-2 company, your support options make up for that deficit in amount of firepower. You know, add maybe a cheap unit of Su-76s or artillery or something that can increase the number of shots you get. I think that the IS-2 company is an interesting formation. I don't think it's a bad formation. I don't see it being super competitive on the competitive scene, but then again, I make no bones about it. I'm not a super tournament player. I don't chase the meta, so in that case, it's up to you as far as what, if you want to field an IS-2 company because it looks cool, that's a good enough reason. IS-2 is a great tank, and you'll have a good time, win or lose. Now, since Bagration's come out, I've had several games with these guys now, so I'm kind of getting a feel for them, and I think they are just a good all-around tank. They're not excelling in any one particular area, but you can fight other tanks pretty well. You can crush infantry pretty well. You can dig out gun teams and infantry out of buildings effectively. So there's something to be said for that. All right, sorry, we digress. So besides the IS-2 company, you can also take IS-2s as a support for another type of company. So an infantry company, or you'll see a battle report coming up where I took IS-2s in support of a heavy self-propelled artillery regiment. The nice thing there is you can just add them, and it adds a pretty decent core outside of your formation. That gives you some firepower. People are going to be firing at those IS-2s and not at your core units typically. So there's something to consider there. The other place you'll find IS-2s are, the IS-2 is the HQ unit for the artillery regiment, the heavy self-propelled artillery regiment. So the big ISU-122s, ISU-152s, those guys have an IS-2 as their basically company or regimental commander, I guess, in that case. So those are different ways to field the tank. Final thoughts on the IS-2? Well, I think it's a good tank. It's an expensive tank. It comes in at about 7 points-ish in a list. That is, kind of what you'd expect for what it's bringing to the table. But it is a well-rounded tank. Again, it's not it's not the best at destroying enemy tanks. It's not the best at taking out infantry, but it can do all of those jobs pretty well. And that's what you're getting, is a well-rounded tank for your points. I do look forward to playing with these more, and seeing more success on the table, hopefully. These guys, I think they look, I think these guys look awesome, which was one of the reasons I wanted to collect them. It's just a cool looking tank. So I'm looking forward to, like I said, playing with them more. Should you invest in them? Ultimately, it's up to you. Like I said, don't get them if you think that they are the ultimate solution to the German heavy tanks, because they're not. You need a combination of that. Combined arms is a Soviet player's friend. But otherwise, yeah, they're good. If nothing else, you probably want a platoon in your toolbox to to be able to add to other formations, even if you don't ever intend to build an IS-2, an IS-2 company. So there you go, guys. Please do know we have a Flames of War Patreon. I'll put a link in the video description below. On Patreon, we have one exclusive battle report a month there for our patrons that you can't get anyplace else, as well as some other content like early release and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. Check that out if you're looking for more Flames of War content. Otherwise, you can also follow us on Facebook at All Miniatures Great and Small, where we post what we're up to, what projects we're working on, and so on. Also, here on YouTube, we'd appreciate a like and subscribe. Also, click that bell to receive notification when we publish new content. As always, though, thanks for watching, and keep on wargaming.